Do you hear that? That, my friends, is the cold, dead sound of failure. Hey everybody. So yes, I find it interesting when other people have trouble. No, I'm not a sadist. I'm just interested in how people solve problems. And there's been plenty of those to go around this year. Loloho has had their fair share of trouble. So has Nomadic Fanatic, and we've had some too. And so the interesting thing about at least how I solve problems, right, is that initially when something crops up, for me, I have like this initial sort of irrational burst of frustration, right? And your prefrontal cortex is kind of constraining down, and you're just having kind of this fight or flight reaction. You're not really thinking through the problem. So I've tried to train myself on the road here to kind of, calm down, look at the problem, analyze it. So I'm going to take you through some of the problems that we've had here. So witness our first problem. This is the CUAT bike rack. But you'll notice for those sharp-eyed viewers that watched last season, this is a different add-on 2 or a different NV2 rack. There's no orange embellishments. So the reason is immediately after our launch this year out of Phoenix, a few hours out, we stopped for fuel, and I was inspecting the trailer as I'm prone to do when we do stop. And I noticed that the entire rack was hanging down kind of at this sickly angle. And the reason was the locking puck on the CUAT like pivot adapter had sheared off, and so all the weight of the bike rack was kind of being transmitted to that single hinge on that thing. It didn't deploy on the freeway, thank God, because there was a second handle that you have to kind of hold down to deploy it, but it was pretty scary, right? So what I had to do is like thinking through the problem, I hastily disassembled the pivot adapter, threw it in the back of the truck, and then just threw the rack directly mounted to the trailer with the NV2 here, and then the add-on 2, which extended the bike rack out. In that configuration, I discovered immediately like two problems. First of all, the rack bucked up and down violently. I mean, really bad. So bad, actually, that the bikes were contacting each other. And I was beginning to get really worried that this rack might actually shear off because it only has that one pin. And I'd already seen one of those pins shear off on their pivot adapter. And then secondly, while this bucking action was taking place, I noticed that the super wide handlebars on the mountain bikes were coming way too close to this glass. In fact, close enough that I was concerned that that it could shatter. So you can see that I've had to rotate in the handlebars on the bike, which is irritating. Right now, when you take it off, I have to do an adjustment. But with the bucking action, basically threatening to damage the bikes, I stopped again at a truck stop and disassembled the add-on 2, and then you had to hastily figure out, what am I going to do with the other bikes? So the gravel bike went into the bed of the truck. That was easy. My hardtail, I had to fully disassemble, and when we got to Denver, I decided to send that back to Phoenix because this just I'm minus 2 places to store the bikes. Finally, I thought for a while, I'm like, I'm very nervous about what I saw with that pivot adapter shearing right on that locking pin. And I began to worry that perhaps I had stressed out that pin on the existing NV2. So I did end up disassembling it to throw it away, fully inspected all the parts. I did not find any evidence of any fatigue, but I didn't trust it anymore. And I bought a new NV2, which didn't have the orange embellishments here, but same rack. In this configuration, it's rock solid. I'm not getting any rocking back and forth, even with really challenging road conditions. So the 2-bike configuration seems to be the way to go for the Airstream for us for now. Lastly, one little comment here. I don't consider this a fail, really. Like, in fact, I'm very impressed that the CUAT has held together as well as it has. And I would like to point out, just kind of a shout out to them. I actually, when I was in Denver, I was looking for a replacement rack. Of course, with COVID, everything is hard to find, especially bike racks. Had to call around to many places, and I discovered that sort of the new trend seems to be bike racks that go into the receiver hitch without a locking pin. And that's just, for me, is unacceptable, right? That's an unacceptable risk. Zero chance that I'm gonna go buy a product that could dump, 100 or 200 pounds of bike onto the freeway because there's no mechanical pin. So CUAT, they've stuck to their guns. They still have the locking pin. So good on you guys. This thing has been a tank. It's been rock solid. So yeah, the add-on 2 didn't work very well. The pivot didn't work, but the rack has been great. Yep, there it is. Furnace won't light. Okay, what's going on? So this is embarrassing. This one took me a while to figure out. When we got here, this is Silverton, Colorado. We've been spending time up in Crested Butte, which is not far from here. And in Crested Butte, this furnace was working fine. Come 3 hours south, and no bueno. So I noticed the first night or two that the furnace wasn't working right. And so I finally got around to looking at it yesterday, and I noticed, I'm like, that's strange. The furnace, it was working in Crested Butte. It's not working here. But Crested Butte is only, maybe 700 feet lower, right? So I don't think it's altitude. And also, we've been here before with this furnace, a couple seasons ago, I had this furnace replaced. So I'm like, what is going on? It's not altitude. But I noticed that the furnace worked fine when the generator was running. And we are in a dry camp spot. So no power hookups. And at first I thought, this doesn't make any sense. The generator doesn't have anything to do with the furnace. And then I put 2 and 2 together, which is when the Airstream is plugged into shore power, such as a generator, the Airstream will run a charging circuit. And that charging circuit will bring the house batteries up to roughly 13 volts and some change. And so this whole furnace is a DC unit. And it has a DC squirrel cage in it that pulls quite a bit of amperage, and it will pull down those batteries when it's working. And I realized that what's going on is the batteries in the trailer are about 3 years old, a little bit more, and they're just old enough where they're starting to kind of give up, right? So the furnace comes on, pulls down the batteries, and there isn't enough juice left for this furnace to hold open the solenoid that supplies propane. Right? So you get that symptom where the furnace starts, runs for a little bit, then the solenoid closes. So I spent yesterday on the phone for hours calling around because Silverton has, I think, 600 permanent residents. And so I found finally in Durango, I found a distributor for the Interstate batteries that the Airstream has. So these batteries are, they're pretty strong actually. They're 1,000 cranking amps and 800 cold cranking amps. They live in this battery box. And herein lies failure number 2. When I went to go open this battery box to get the part number, lo and behold, the catch that you turn to open this battery box was frozen shut. So I put some liquid wrench on it, let it sit, put some more liquid wrench on it, fiddled with it, let it sit. I eventually had to basically wrench it open with a wrench and snap off the freaking ears on this thing. This piece of crap, right? Like this $8 piece of crap Camco latch. I almost was in a situation where I would have to drill out this battery box to get into it, but I did finally get in. And so what it revealed is that we have 2 Interstate batteries, and these are called 34M AGMs. And look at that, they have a 36-month warranty, and I think these are about 38 months old, so they know what they're doing. But anyway, so I found a distributor. They put 2 on order. I'll pick them up in a few days, and I will show you a little bit of video of me replacing these bad boys. But you can see this thing is positively bristling with wires, and you know, they have the 2-terminal design here so that the Airstream can pull off of these 2 batteries in parallel, so they're ganged together, providing, you know, looks like basically almost 124 amp hours of inverter power if we wanted to. So yeah, so that's how I figured out that the batteries in the Airstream are going bad. How's that for a fail? All right, we're getting ready to drive to Montrose. Hour-and-a-half trip from Silverton. Apparently, AGM batteries, yeah, I've made probably 30 phone calls, and AGM batteries are very uncommon in Western Colorado. I finally found a battery store in Montrose that explained to me that AGMs are really recommended for high heat environments such as the desert. So it's probably why my Airstream came equipped with those batteries in the first place. So we can't find exact Interstate brand, but they found a substitution. So you got to do what you got to do. So I'm going to go down and grab those batteries. Okay, we're here at B&D Batteries in Montrose. Let's go get our stuff. I'm back from B&D Battery in Montrose. They've hooked me up with these Group 34 AGMs. So Group 34 means that they're not as tall, so they fit inside the Airstream battery box. And you can see that these are a little tiny little bit lower in rating, slightly lower cold cranking amps, and a slightly lower amp hours, but they will do the job handily. And so we are going to lift these suckers into the battery box and take out the old batteries and hook everything up. This is a good sign. So there's little alligator clips here. This is how the TPMS transmitter attaches, which is fine. And oh, power indicator. Go back into use mode. Let's see if, oh, that's good. We got power. And we've got power to the fridge. Let's see if it lights. There it goes. Measure the voltage. Now remember, these batteries have been in storage for God knows how long. They could be in storage for a year for all I know. They are marked as a manufacture date of 2021, so, but we're sitting at about 12.7 volts, which is already better than the old batteries were after a full day of charging. So now what we're going to do is turn on the generator and let the charging circuit turn on. Okay, so I've had the generator on for approximately 5 minutes. So the charge controller in the Airstream is presently charging the batteries. And you can see we've already jumped up to 14 volts. By the time these guys are done charging, which could take up to a day-ish, depending on how often we run the generator, these will float during charging as high as 14 volts and some change, 14.5, 14.7, somewhere around there, which is, as you can tell, much better than the old Interstates. Well, it turns out there's a little bit more to this story. After I replaced all those batteries, things were better. Furnace ran better. For the most part, it would run overnight. I still felt like there was something not quite right, though. In fact, I was able to crack open the service panel for the furnace here. And I was able to, while the furnace was lighting, manually actuate the sail switch and demonstrate that even with the sail switch closed during combustion, that the furnace would still flame out. And I felt like, maybe there is a little altitude component here. So Googled around, found a kit on Amazon called a Atwood high altitude kit. 1-star review, and only one review, no description of the part whatsoever, and pretty expensive, but I bought it anyway because I was kind of desperate, right? And lo and behold, what arrived in the kit is this. These are Flues. This is the original Flue, and the Flue insert right here. And the kit came with another Flue and a plastic insert. So looking at these Flues, I was sort of frustrated for two reasons. First of all, this plastic insert will not fit into this service panel, at least without modification. I have some plans in the future potentially to modify this, to accept this, whatever this does. But I looked at these Flues and I said, well, okay, thanks a lot. I've already got exactly these parts, and I threw it in the drawer. It wasn't until later, a few days ago, that I was kind of, like desperate. I'm like, well, yes, the furnace is working better, but it's still not working the way it should. I pulled open the panel, I pulled the sail switch, cleaned it off. It is on the house side, so it can accumulate dust and hair and stuff, and fully blew out the area. I checked all the connections, looked for any loose propane connectors, anything, right? And everything looked fine. But lo and behold, I threw the existing Flue down on the ground next to the other one, and what should I observe but they're different. It turns out the original Flue has sort of this constrictor ring in it, whereas the high altitude Flue does not. So I thought that I would install this high altitude Flue, which turns out even has a different part number. And I thought, I don't know what this does. Obviously something possibly to do with airflow, but certainly without the constricting ring in here, this is going to provide more airflow. And it's like a brand new furnace. Now it's almost to the point where I feel like this furnace is working like it should. I will post this part number with the video, and with that Flue installed there, I now have two, right? I have one I can use at high altitude, one I can use at low. The high altitude kit came with no instructions, so I still have no idea what this is for, but it has created a huge improvement for me. I am down to now, essentially everything works like it should all the way through the morning. I do notice that those batteries, though, are still, they're struggling a little by morning time. I mean, it's down in the mid-20s here in the morning in Silverton. And we're not here too much longer, but it's possible potentially that either there's still one lingering little problem with the furnace, or that those batteries, which are the only ones I could find in all of Western Colorado within a month period, it's possible that those batteries probably wouldn't cut it, and I may need to replace them with the original Interstates. But we're up and running, we have heat, and this Flue seemed to be kind of push us over the finish line to make it bearable while we're here. Oh yeah, and look what I scored. A replacement latch to replace the broken one that I had to force out of there. Hopefully this one lasts a little longer. I don't know.